The Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live.
Good afternoon and welcome to The Locker Room. We are here a little bit later this afternoon. Normally we are 3 o'clock till 5. Today we are on 5 till 6. And we are looking back at the game that has just finished at Hampden Park this afternoon, where in the Viaplay Cup final, it finished Rangers 1, Celtic 2. A double from Kyogo Furuhashi had put Celtic 2-0 up. Alfredo Morelos scored in the second half to make it 2-1. From then on, it became a very interesting game. Celtic probably could have killed the game off very, very late on in the second half. Chances from Matt O'Reilly and a couple of chances near the end as well. I'm hoping that very shortly we'll be joined by Alan Morrison from Celtic by Numbers and also Scott McPike as well to look back on the game this afternoon. As I say, we are here from 5 till 6 tonight, just the hour. And we are going to be joined right now, I believe. And we have, I would imagine, a very happy and very relieved from Celtic by Numbers, Mr. Alan Morrison. Alan, how are you doing this fine afternoon? And thank you for joining me.
Yeah, sorry, I'm straight there. Not even getting to see the cup being presented. Can we start in about 15 minutes? Is that all right? I've had to hit the record button. Yeah, no, very happy. A little bit relieved. Yeah, a little bit of, I don't know why we just suddenly stopped managing the game well. Really, I think we thought we'd make it interesting by just making lots of really bad mistakes. But there you go, got over the line in the end.
Yeah, I mean there wasn't really much in the game first half. Obviously, Kyogo gets the goal, but looking at the two lineups at the start of the game, Celtic had Joe Hart, Johnston, Carter-Vickers, Starfelt, Taylor, McGregor, Moy, and Hatate, and Jota, Maeda, and Kyogo. On the bench, it was Bain, Haksabanovic, Abada, Turnbull, Kobayashi, Iwata, O'Reilly, and Ralston. Rangers had McGregor in goal, Tavernier, Golson, Davis, and Barisic, Kamara, Lundstrom, Tillman, Sakala, Kent, and Morelos. And on the bench for Rangers, it was McLaughlin, Hadji, Jack, Cholak, Cantwell, Wright, Arfield, Raskin, and Devine. Alan, in terms of that Celtic lineup, I think having Aaron Moy back, there was a lot of talk about whether it would be Moy or O'Reilly. Was that the right decision for you that Aaron Moy came straight back in?
Yeah, I think I've said before that I thought O'Reilly would keep his place. It would be, other than Kyogo starting, it would be the same team that started the last game. But he went for Moy. You can't argue with that in terms of form. Moy's been absolutely terrific for a couple of months now. And he's also, he's not someone who's going to get fazed by a big occasion. He's a big game player. He is a very calm player. So although he doesn't have the physicality, maybe he uses his body well, he protects the ball well, and he's probably a little bit safer in possession. So in that respect, I had no issues with that sort of selection, really. He did okay. I think he was probably possibly at fault for their goal, but otherwise, he was pretty calm on the ball as always, prompting a good range of passing. And as I say, he's just quite safe. He doesn't get easily bullied off the ball, because I think they went with three quite big physical players in the middle of the pitch, and I think they were looking to sort of win that physical battle, really. So it was important, I think, to have someone like Moy who's just got that game experience to be able to manage his way through whatever battle it might be, whether it's a physical battle or whether it's a more tactical battle.
In terms of that Rangers team, did anything really surprise you? Because again, there was talk about Lundstrom might not make it, Tillman might not make it, but they both made it. Was there any massive surprise in that Rangers team for you?
No, I think Mickey was playing, some sort of amateur mind games in the week. I don't think there was ever any doubt that they would pick the strongest team that they could. I was a little bit surprised that they didn't put couple of the new superstars in, and they went with a more sort of tried and trusted I suppose a safer selection in that sense. And I think, as I say, especially midfield, I think they were going for a more solid physical three, and I think they went to really match Celtic up as more of a 4-3-3 shape, and really sort of to try and press Celtic. So not a massive surprise. I think Sakala is always a worry for me up against Taylor, so I wasn't surprised to see him playing. I think Kent's probably been a more effective player coming in more as a number 10. And although he didn't play as an out-and-out winger, he was sort of wider, out of possession. So I think they kind of changed shape a little bit in that regard, more from a 4-2-3-1, more to more sort of matching up Celtic in the 4-3-3. So a slight surprise of that, because I think that was actually quite a defensive move. I think they were trying to match Celtic really, rather than imposing perhaps their own game on Celtic. But having said that, it was an experienced team that they had out there, so I don't think there was any huge surprises.
Before we get back to the football, as I said, we are here till 6 o'clock tonight discussing the big game today. But in Paris this afternoon, it finished France 32, Scotland 21. Scotland were 19-0 down at half-time, so they did manage to come back, but unfortunately, they just ran out of steam, and unfortunately, France's quality in the end did show. So disappointment for Scotland. They've got 2 home games to come now against Scotland, against Ireland and Italy, but a disappointment this afternoon as they went down 32-21 to France in Paris. But in terms of the football, before we get back to the actual game itself, again, a lot of talk before the game, and I kind of thought this myself as well. The last time we showed the Viaplay Cup semi-finals, the pitch was an absolute disgrace. What did you make of it this afternoon? Did it look any better to you?
It looked okay at the start, but it seemed quite heavy and it cut up. And the game seemed quite slow to me. It seemed like the ball wasn't zipping across the surface. And it looked like it was a bit of a heavy surface. So yeah, not another not great surface, unfortunately. It was better than it was in the semi-finals, but that's not really saying much, is it?
No, very true. It was awful in that first day, those 2 semi-finals. But in terms of the game, again, the first half, there wasn't all in it. I thought Celtic probably dominated possession mostly. Jota had a shot just over after 20 minutes, and probably the one thing that stood out for me in that first half, apart from the goal, which we'll get to in a minute, was the fantastic challenge from Carter Vickers in the first half. Tavernier puts the ball in from the right-hand side, and Carter Vickers, if he doesn't get there, Tillman's scoring. Absolutely fantastic defending from Carter Vickers.
Yeah, I think it was a contrast, really. The way that Carter Vickers defended his front post to get his foot in there was in stark contrast to the 2 Celtic goals, which both times we saw Celtic get the ball in front of Goldson, who wasn't protecting his front post twice, and that cost both of their goals, really. So that his defending in that instance was in stark contrast, really. I think they did look dangerous on the break, especially when Sakala got the ball on the right. I think he's a little bit erratic, which is probably why Van Bronckhorst didn't like to play him a lot. And then he didn't really create a lot, Sakala, from those chances. But otherwise, my only really concern in that first half was really sort of free kicks and corners, where it looked like they might be a little bit dangerous. I think we controlled the game without creating great chances. McGregor made a good save from a Jota shot. Kyogo had a shot that just went past the post, and then there was that header from Kyogo that went over with good chances, and there was a few other half chances. But I think the importance of that first half was more to do with the way that Celtic controlled the ball. One of the things that we noticed during the European run was that Celtic are a team that domestically are used to having the ball anything from sort of 65 to 75% of the time. And what we found was we were playing teams of the quality of Leipzig and Madrid is that suddenly you're dropping down to having the ball 40% of the time. You're trying to play a high pressing game. Now, previously, as I say, in Scotland, Celtic are pressing off of being without the ball about 25% of the time. When you're pressing off of having, not having the ball 60% of the time, that's a very different physical load that you're putting on the players. So I think the Rangers suffered a little bit in the same way that Celtic suffered in Europe, in that obviously your Rangers domestically are used to dominating possession as well. And in that first half, they were having to do an awful lot of work without the ball. And I think as the half wore on, and in those last 10 minutes of that half, I think Celtic physically started to dominate the game because the Rangers are not used to chasing round the pitch for 45 minutes and pressing quite as hard as that. So I thought, and then for Celtic to score quite early in the second half, I thought we'd see it out, but it all kind of went to pot after that. But I'm sure we'll get to that bit.
Delighted to welcome another guest, and he's been on before. You should know his face by now. We have Mr. Scott McPike with us. Scott, thank you again for joining us, mate. How are you this afternoon?
Pleasure as always, mate. Yeah, interesting game. Very interesting. Sure, we'll get into it in great detail.
What did you make of that game? I've just actually asked Alan a minute ago about the two lineups. Was there anything in those lineups that really surprised you from either side?
Yeah, Rangers lineup. I think Rangers were beat as soon as the lineup was revealed. To be honest, I think that midfield just did not cope well with Celtic. I thought that from the beginning. I did think Kieran kind of Lundstram and Tillman would play. I thought maybe one of them would come in. I thought I was very surprised that Raskin didn't start. I thought maybe you would have kind of Raskin, Kamara, and Tillman to then go with Lundstram, Kamara, and Tillman. One thing that doesn't scream to me is ball retention, which we'll get into, which I think was a big reason why Celtic won the game and Rangers didn't. And I think that the lineup was Celtic's lineup was exactly what I thought it would be, and I just think the Rangers midfield just got the midfield wrong. That's my honest opinion of it.
Scott, do you think? I felt he was going for more physicality and trying to match up and basically outmuscle the Celtic midfield 3v3.
Yeah.
Do you think that was what was in his mind?
Yeah, definitely. I think he had that in his mind. But as well, when you're doing that, what you're sacrificing is technicality. Tillman was kind of drifting right. I thought Sakala had a bit of a shocking game, to be honest. And Tillman was doing a lot of his kind of dirty work. He was having to get in and kind of retain the ball. And it just I thought Hatate, Moy, McGregor, they were just so, I think it was so comfortable for them in the first half. They were just able to keep the ball. Rangers were not keeping the ball well. As you say, physicality, another thing as well, I don't think Lundstram and Tillman were fit, I don't think Moy was fit either, but Moy's very good at just keeping the ball, just interchanging with Hatate in particular. And Rangers just didn't work. It just didn't work.
It's funny because as someone that had no dog in the race, thankfully, because my teams don't really do well in cup finals, but as someone that had no dog in the race, I found it quite interesting because I actually do agree with that. I thought the midfields, especially first half, I thought Celtic with Moy, Hatate and McGregor, while there wasn't a lot of stuff maybe happening going forward, I thought Celtic did have a lot more control in that midfield. Alan, did you see exactly the same? Did you think the midfield was much better than what Rangers midfield was?
Yeah, I think, Tillman's a very good technical player. He's very strong running with the ball. But like you say, maybe not so strong, or Sakala so strong without the ball. And what Hatate was doing was creating little overloads on that side. And so, Celtic tend to be a team that are a bit over-reliant on playing down the left side anyway. But and I was a bit worried that we were just kind of, again, being a bit predictable in that sense. But it made sense to the extent that I think, Hatate was finding little pockets and picking up the ball very nicely. And just, as I say, with Taylor and with Maeda, just creating those little overloads and really giving Tillman a lot of problems in terms of who he should be picking up. And obviously, Sakala, it's not necessarily his strength to work the other way. I thought the three midfielders did okay. I think where both sides were wasteful, really, was when the ball went to the wide players. Jota and Maeda. Maeda on the ball was actually atrocious. Without the ball, he was absolutely fantastic. He never let Tavernier get up the pitch at all. And Jota, I think Jota again didn't really do a lot when he had the ball out wide. And similarly with Sakala and Ken. So I think both sides' wide players were a bit of a disappointment, and most of the danger actually came from midfielders breaking in, or as we saw in the end of the first half, Greg Taylor making the overlap. So that was where the danger and the quality came from, really. But you're right. I think I was just saying, Scott, drawing the analogy between the way that, because obviously Rangers didn't have a lot of the ball in the first half, which they're not used to. And it seemed like that was taking a toll physically, especially on the players that you said may not have been 100% fit. It looked like their legs were going, and that last 10 minutes of that first half, it looked like they were starting to really, really kind of tire them out attritionally. So I think you're spot on.
I think as well. Sorry, on you go.
No, on you go.
I find it interesting, like the first half, Rangers were very sloppy in possession. I don't think the pitch helped, which is another thing we'll get on to. I thought the pitch was atrocious, and it has been for years, and that's another. I could go into a 20-minute rant about that. But Rangers were not good at retaining the ball. I thought they were very sloppy, and I thought Rangers' only chance was the one where Tillman played the ball in. Carter Vickers was brilliant to get that away. The problem Rangers have there is, though, they're losing. Their only threat was at that point. And as I said, I kept saying to my partner, me and my partner are watching the game together. I said, if Rangers can keep the ball, if Rangers can keep it 0-0 till half time, I think Rangers will come out of the trap second half, which they've been prone to do. and Rangers just lose that goal, and I think that just wins. I think Celtic win the game from there because Rangers came out the traps a bit better in the second half, but again Celtic just find that extra moment. Brilliant bit of football by Hatate and Moy to play Kyogo in. Kyogo was brilliant again, fighting off Barisic. And Rangers then play into it, but it's too late because they're 2-0 down. They bring on the midfield that I thought should have played. But then they're just, and this Rangers team are not good at overcoming obstacles. They just aren't. They're 2-0 down. They can play all the good football they want, but creating chances, can you think of a big chance Rangers created in the last 20 minutes apart from the Ryan Jack one? Because I don't think I can.
There was a Sakala one was at the back post, wasn't it? It broke to him.
I think. There wasn't a great deal of chances. There wasn't a chance where you thought like Rangers, if they can get on the end of something, they'll score. They just didn't, and they're not good at that. And we'll get into this later on. I think this Rangers team are at the end of that cycle. I think Beale's in the summer he's got a massive job to because a lot of this team now, and it maybe harsh, but a lot of that team are losers. They've lost more than they've won. You need to freshen it up, and that's where we're at now with this Rangers team. And today's another example of that.
We have another guest with us. We have Mr. Josh McCaffrey. Josh, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, guys. How are you?
Not too bad. What was your take on that game this afternoon?
I think Celtic obviously were deserved winners. When they went 2-0 up, it was really hard for Rangers to find a way back into it. Celtic kind of ended it on. I think the timing of the first goal was crucial, and the timing of the second one was crucial as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, get the goal to get back into the game. They didn't really. I think you were just saying it there, Scott. They didn't really create much after that goal. There was opportunities. The changes did make a difference, and they done pretty well. But Celtic were able to professionally hold out, and they used the third late on. See, attack Sabanovic with a few opportunities on the counter attack. Still deserved winners and proving why they are the champions of Scotland and the best team in Scotland.
There's a point by Donny Robertson actually, and Scott, you can probably pick up on this point because you kind of mentioned a minute ago. He says Raskin should have started. We lost the midfield back before the match began. I think you probably agree with that, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I just thought it was bringing two players in who were injury doubts. I get playing one of them, but you need that balance in midfield. Celtic's even Moy wasn't coming into this match 100% fit, but McGregor and Hatate were there just to kind of tidy up if Moy was struggling. Moy struggled a bit towards. That's why he were off in 60 minutes. You could see him struggling in the second half. But McGregor and Hatate are fully fit. Lundstrom and Tillman, especially in that pitch. Kamara isn't good at that defensive side. He's neat and tidy. He's a kind of recycler. He's not a defensive midfielder. He's not an attacking midfielder. So Rangers had a gap in midfield, and Raskin, I think when Raskin and Jack come on, I thought as soon as they come on, I was thinking like 2 minutes in, I was thinking that's been missing the first 55 minutes because as soon as they come on, they brought that balance in midfield. Cantwell was able to pick up wee pockets. I thought he linked quite well with Sakala actually, which Tillman didn't really do in the full game. And it was that change. And if you, as I say, Josh is 100% right. Celtic scored their 2 goals at the best times for Celtic, and that was the difference. Celtic Rangers could have played all day and not scored because they're not good at it. They're not good at coming from bringing deficits back. Go and watch any Rangers game where they go 2-0 down. They're pushing for a goal. They're not good at it.
Alan, about a minute before Kyogo scores, he has a chance just before that where it's a great cross from Alistair Johnston and Kyogo is all alone in the middle and heads it over. Now, when I'm kind of watching games, I also have the radio on to hear what other folk are saying. And one of the guys on the radio said that they think Kyogo should do better. Is that harsh?
I'm always I think it's harsh when people make those comments in terms of headers, because headers, as every good expected goals model will tell you, headers are harder to score than obviously than shots, clearly, right? So having said that, and it was a nice low flat, quite hard cross, and he just mistimed it. It came off the side of his head. If he got it on his forehead, I don't think McGregor would have stood a chance if it gone, unless it hit him. So it was just, I suppose at that level you can quibble and say maybe he should have done better. But for me, the more important thing at the time was that where Celtic are strong is that we're very patient. They'll keep playing football. They'll keep putting the pressure on. They'll not panic if nothing's happening. because they'll just keep probing, and eventually, the chances will come, and that's kind of what happened. I'm fascinated with what Scott said, because when we were on the Huddle Breakdown podcast before the game, we all agreed that if Beale plays a midfield that he played, the Kamara, Lundstrom, Tillman, we were really concerned, because we thought that would be a midfield that would physically more athletic and more physical than our midfield. That
I think fully fit it does, Alan. I think that's the thing.
Right.
I think that's the thing.
Yeah,
I think if they're fully fit, I think that's a competent midfield. I just thought you could see it a lot of times. Tillman gets injured really early on as well, and you can see him after that. He's not as keen to get into tackles. And Lundstrom, I just thought the game completely passed Lundstrom by. To be honest, Kamara wasn't. I didn't think. And Hatate, Moy, McGregor, the one thing they are, and you would think, where's the attacking threat in that midfield three? They're all very technical and they all link up brilliantly with each other. And that was what beat Rangers in the midfield, because they were just able to pick up wee spaces. The wee link between Hatate and Moy for the second goal was as good as you'll see, because they're one step ahead of everybody else. They just know where to be, know where to put the ball, and then the ball comes in. Kyogo has to do a wee bit of work and they get that goal. But I think a fully fit Rangers, I think they're more capable of challenging that. They're just today, as soon as I saw the lineup, I was thinking, yes, maybe play Lundstrom, Raskin and Kamara and maybe try and match that physicality-wise. Tillman wouldn't have brought that if he's not fully fit, because you could see early on he struggled. He wouldn't get into tackles. And yeah, Celtic won the midfield. And that we speak about it so often in Rangers Celtic games. Whoever wins the midfield wins the game. It is right. It's not a cliche. It's true. And we see that a lot of the games. For example, today, that's what won the game.
How would you feel? How do you think that the likes of Cantwell, Raskin, Jack will feel if they're fully fit and then they're not starting in front of players that are less than 100%?
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, Cantwell's looked quite good since his command. I think he's something different in terms of he's quite silky. He's kind of similar. Like you maybe see like a Jack Grealish. Like he's neat and tidy. He'll draw fouls. Like he's that kind of player as well. Rangers haven't had that in a long time. And Raskin, although he's only played 2 games, the first thing he wants, see if he loses the ball, he's like a dog. He just wants to win it back. He's just quick to get the ball back. And that's another thing Rangers haven't had. Lundstrom hasn't been the player he was last season. Kamara hasn't really. I think Kamara's passed it. Not passed it in terms of player, just passed it in terms of maybe another one of those examples is he's not. He's been there about 4 years. He's won 2 trophies. There's a losing mentality in that Rangers team with a lot of players, and this is another example. And the striker Morelos, I thought he was atrocious most of the game. I know he scores a goal, but he's done very little. When you see Kyogo, I don't think Kyogo had his best game either. But he's there in the dangerous moments. He scores those 2 goals. He's in the right place. He does brilliantly in the final ball. Morelos didn't do that today. I know he scores, but apart from that, he's drawing fouls, he's diving about. There's a big difference between the 2 centre forwards, in my opinion, and I think we're at that end of the cycle for Morelos, and I think he needs. Would
Kolak or Roof be a better option? Do you think, in your view?
Roof would if he's fit, but there's a reason Kamara Roof's at Rangers, because he's injury prone and. Rangers, that's again a recruitment problem where Rangers snapped him up because they thought he's a bargain, but there's a reason that Anderlecht were willing to sell him for 3.5 when they bought him for 4.5 because he's injured all the time. So when Kamara's fit, he's the number 1 option, but he's never fit. I mean, he scores last week and then he's sitting today on the bench.
One of our regular contributors, a St Mirren fan, as we know, says Celtic's defeat comes next week because they're Paisley next week. So that could be an interesting game. But Josh, the opening goal does come 2 minutes before half time, and it is Kyogo. It's a really good move down the left-hand side. Lovely ball from Moyen behind to Greg Taylor, who flashes it across goal. Maeda tries to connect with it, completely has a fresh air swipe. I don't know what Ben Davis is doing in the middle of the box, and it's just left to Kyogo for a tap-in. It's good play from Celtic, but really poor defensively from Rangers. Josh?
Yeah, I think the defender from Rangers and unmarked, he's going to score. It's simple. That if Kyogo's on the box, he'll score, and if you give him the opportunity. It was very good build-up play from Celtic down the left. I don't think Taylor had the best game at left back, but he done well on a couple of occasions to get up that left-hand side. And like you say, Maeda, I don't even know if it was a shot, if he was trying to forward it on to Kyogo or whatever, but he got the ball across and Kyogo scored. It was also a very similar to Celtic's second goal, except it was Hatate who flashed the ball across. It was a good ball in behind him there for a rally, and Kyogo bundled home. His positioning, Kyogo, is excellent. He's finishing, and it's now 4 goals and 2. And I read something on Twitter. He is the first player to brace in back-to-back League Cup finals since 1957, I think. So that's an immense record for him, and I think he's the best striker in Scotland. Like you said, Scott, Morelos wasn't at his best despite the goal. But Rangers were poor. Celtic deserved the victory, and Kyogo is the best striker in Scotland. Now he's aiming for 30 goals this season, and I think he'll surpass that probably.
So Graham, I said to you, sorry, I said to you before that boys joined, and Scott, I'm interested in your opinion on this, that I thought both goals were basically down to Goldson, because that's where your centre half, he should be at the front post, like Carter Vickers was to take that Tillman, to intercept that Tillman cross. Goldson is the one that should be on the front post, and he was missing for both of those. So I felt that was probably more the
Goldson is this weird thing, and you said the perfect example of this was the Europa League final. He seems to attack a ball if it comes out in the left hand side. Now I don't know whether he thinks to himself that, because I think everybody thinks that Tavernier's weak defensively, which I can see that angle, but he seems to go for, instead of looking at a striker, like kind of following a striker's run, he seems to attack the cross, which you don't see that much because at a centre back, the first priority is take care of your problem in your box. You don't attack a cross coming in unless you know that you're well covered. Davis's positioning is poor, but Goldson always has this thing to just attack a cross coming in from his left. He doesn't do it in his right, obviously, because he's right-sided. But that's another example. That's what the first goal. Goldson doesn't know where to stick or twist. Davis's positioning, I don't know what he's doing, and Kyogo's got a free tap in, and as you say, from 6 yards out, Kyogo's scoring that all day long. And he's bad for that. Yeah, but I see that. I totally agree with that. Goldson's too focused and trying to clear his problem before clear a problem that he should be leaving for his right back, as opposed to try to fix his problem in the middle, which he's always been guilty of it since he came in.
Alan, I want to touch on somebody you mentioned earlier on, and that's Daz Almeida, because you said that on the ball he maybe wasn't great, which I agree with. But I think if you're a player in that Celtic side, and especially if you're a Postecoglou, and if you're a fan, he's the player that you love, because he never stops working. He never stops tracking back. His work rate is phenomenal, but like Kyogo. So I think even when he's not having the best of games on the ball, he's such an infectious character because he just never stops running.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And today was a bit of almost regression. He's been actually improving on the ball since the World Cup. It seems his confidence has just absolutely leapt forward, and he's taking more responsibility. He's really attacking fullbacks with the ball. He's making much more aggressive runs. He's getting on the ball more. He's more crosses, more shots. So his output has just gone up hugely since the World Cup. But today was a little bit more like the Maeda that we saw when he first joined, which is unquestionable work rate off the ball. But on the ball, he just seemed very tentative. In fact, very nervous on the ball, and he miscontrolled it a number of times. I think he couldn't. Tavernier defended him quite well the first 2 times he ran down the line, and whether that knocked his confidence, I don't know. But when you play against Rangers, you know that the vast majority of their creativity is going to come from the 2 fullbacks. They're the ones that keep the width. Kent's going to drift in, Sakala's going to drift in, and they're going to be the ones that look to get the balls into the box. So I think in terms of stopping Tavernier, he's a terrific crosser of the ball. Him stopping Tavernier to such an extent was a really important part of the game, actually. So despite the fact that he was a bit hapless on the ball, I thought he just did a terrific job tracking Tavernier's runs and really harassing him every time he tried to break forward. And that was really valuable. Even when he went off with about 10 to go and Haksabanovic came on, I was a bit concerned because Haksabanovic isn't that kind of player that's going to do that. So I was a bit worried. But actually, it turned out okay in the end.
Scott, if I flick that over to Ryan Kent, you don't really at times get that impression with Ryan Kent. He doesn't really want to track back. He doesn't really want to get involved that much. Ryan Kent on the ball, I've said this numerous times, I think Ryan Kent is a very, very good footballer on his day, but at times like today, he just wasn't really at it.
Yeah, I think as well. I think I don't think a lot of Rangers players had a great day. But again, Kent's your kind of he's the kind of main man. He's the guy you want the ball to drive Rangers forward, and it just didn't really happen for him. I think, to be fair as well, Alistair Johnson defended him terrifically. I thought Johnson was terrific in both sides of the park, and I thought Johnson was probably, I would say Johnson was the player of the match for me, in my opinion. I just thought he defended his box brilliantly. He was getting forward, even in the last minute or so. He's just keeping it steady, just defending Kent well. One thing Kent tries to do a lot is cut in. Johnson was making him go wide, and that's why he struggled under Van Bronckhorst, because Van Bronckhorst wanted around the byline. He was having to spend a lot of time out there, and it was difficult for him to come in. Johnson defended him brilliantly. So yeah, but again, Kent's another one who's just like, our Rangers going to progress with the same players. Now I've been impressed with Kent since Bill came in, because he's played them a lot more towards a kind of middle, as a kind of wide 10 as it is. Like maybe like kind of the thing Bill had done is he's let his wingers tuck in, similar to what Gerrard did. And you've seen a better Ryan Kent in the past few months since Bill's come in, but today he was getting shown out to his left, and he wasn't able to do it well at all. And that's the thing. Is Kent worth a new contract? Probably, yeah. I think there is good sides to him, but the game has to be perfect for him, and today wasn't that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh, on Ryan Kent at the start of the second half, he does have a shot just off the post, just after the half, and then Fashion Sakala, I don't know what he's doing, but he hits the side net. I think he should do a lot better with that.
Fashion Sakala doesn't know what he's doing. Nothing.
Harsh.
There's times. Sorry, Josh, but there's a spell in the game, and I said I was watching the game with my partner, and I say this: I'll talk constantly through a game, and I'll bring up wee things that I notice. There was a point in the game where Sakala brought this ball down, and you would think, honestly, it was a world-class touch. He does the same thing 2 minutes later, and it hits off his shin. Only a player who doesn't have control of his intelligence is that happens to, and he's good. There was times he was getting the ball by Taylor. There was times he looked really good, but there's times you just wonder, what is he thinking? He's not thinking at times. That's his problem. See if you could just coach him, get a wee bit of a decent IQ into him in terms of football. I think he'd be a really good player. But you've still got this unpredictability thing with Sakala, which is brilliant at times, but at times it frustrates you.
Would you agree with that, Josh?
Yeah, he should have. I mean, I would agree. I think he's very raw. You usually use that word in terms of a young player, but Fashion Sakala is in his mid to late 20s now, but he still doesn't have him, and that was proved with the mixed chance. He snaps at the opportunity and puts it into the side net, and it reminds me a bit of one I think Patrick Roberts had back in a Scottish Cup semi-final between Celtic and Rangers in 2015, I think it was. But Sakala should have. Morelos is there. If he cuts it back, it's an easy tap in for Morelos, and that was a crucial chance because 1-0 up at the time. And if Rangers get that goal, that brings it back level, and you never know where the game can go from there. But like you say, Sakala, I think the one you were talking about, Scott, he took it down really, really well. And he's a one-trick pony, you could argue. He just looks to get past and just use his pace and try and blister past his opponent. And he'd done that. He got in behind Greg Taylor on a good few occasions in face. However, I think he's still very lacks composure, is raw, and that was proved with the missed chance that if he cuts it back from Morelos, it's a goal, simply.
Yeah, I mean, Alan, Celtic do get the second goal, and as we mentioned, quite a carbon copy of the first goal. Really good play again. Lovely ball from Moya to Hatate. Hatate puts it across the box, and again, it's that wanting to score, and that's what Kyogo's got. He gets in front of the defender. He's making that his, and he scores his second goal.
Yeah, there's a couple of elements to it that are illustrative of how Celtic's attacking play is evolving under Postecoglou. And what I mean by that is, there was still a tendency last year as the new players were bedding in that whereas there was a lot of control in games, you got this kind of horseshoe passing quite a bit, and that's why virtually every team that we play now sets out with this quite low block with 5 players across the box, 3 or 4 in front of them, and they play quite deep. But what Celtic, I think, have been very effective at, especially since the World Cup break, is we're far more aggressive in our passing into central areas. So we get the ball into the box, even though it's congested, we'll still play that pass into the box and trust the technique of Hatate or O'Reilly or Moy or whoever's on the end of it, Kyogo, to lay it off to someone running is the first element. And the second element is he wants to see his number 8s and the winger who's on the opposite side to the ball. He wants to see them attacking those central areas in the box. And it's just a great way to break down a packed defence, is to commit defenders centrally rather than don't take the bait and get forced wide. Actually attack those central areas. And that second goal is a perfect example of if you look back at Celtic games in the last 2 months, we've created so many chances very similar to that, where someone's taken responsibility, taken the ball in the box, laid it off, and then across, and there's bodies attacking that ball in great positions. We score a lot of goals inside the 6-yard box, a bit like Manchester City used to do under Guardiola, because that's what we're trying to do. that's what everyone's focused on, is getting the ball into those areas, and we're just becoming more effective at doing it. And that was a great example of it.
Scott, I've mentioned before on the show as well that for me, one of the standouts, not just in Celtic this season, but probably in Scotland, has been Reo Hatate. What have you made of Hatate this season?
He's kicked on, as we were talking the other night, actually, where there was the first time his debut was against Hibs, and he was brilliant that first night, and there was that kind of few week period where he scored against Hearts, scored against Rangers, and I thought it was that Rangers Celtic want to watch here with this guy, and then he seemed to dip a wee bit, and that kind of happens to a lot of foreign players where they're kind of finding their feet. This season he's just been a completely different player, and I think it's that balance as well. I know I keep going on about it, but having those players who he knows what they're going to do, like if it's McGregor and O'Reilly, or if it's McGregor and Moy, the 3 of them link brilliantly together. O'Reilly's maybe a bit different than Moy in terms of the fact that O'Reilly's a lot further forward, where Moy is kind of just a kind of number 8 at the kind of end of his spell, where he's kind of coming back and just wants to keep the ball, and that suits Hatate. Hatate's able to drive forward, or if the 2 of them are kind of sitting back, McGregor's allowed to go forward a wee bit. And Hatate's the link there. Hatate's the one who kind of keep. And we forget this as well. You see a lot of times, like if Taylor's going forward, Hatate will go in and cover for Taylor. He's got that versatility. He's just so important to that Celtic team. I would go far as to say he's been the player of the season so far. That's been my opinion, because he's scoring a lot of goals. He's adding goals to his game as well. He's just so important to that Celtic team. And the main thing is Postecoglou trusts him. Postecoglou clearly tells him, this is your priority for today. Go in and do this. If you're needing to go forward a wee bit, if he's chopping and changing the midfield, he always seems to do his job well. I don't think I've seen him with a bad game this season, and I've watched Celtic a lot. I don't think I've watched a game and thought Hatate hasn't been up to it today. There's been a lot of times where I thought today was superb as well. He's always a 7 out of 10. That's what you want. You want a level of consistency, and he's the man for that. I think he's the consistent factor in that Celtic team, and he's probably been the best player of the season so far.
Josh, I can see you're agreeing with that.
Yeah, I would say Hatate he's been a class above in the Scottish Premiership this season. Like you said, Scott, he was on him in, and I think the reason he lost some of that form was down to the fact he just came off the back of a full season Japan, coming half across the world to Scotland and getting thrown into the thick of it. And he kind of lost that form towards the end of the season. He got his good break over summer, and then he was able to come in this season and absolutely hit the ground running. I think the way he passes the ball, he uses his body brilliantly. He's so intelligent in terms of that. He's done it on a few occasions today. He gets into advanced positions. He can put in a tackle. He's not afraid to do that as well. And I think it won't be long before some big teams are looking at Reo Hatate. So I think Celtic fans like myself, Alan, should enjoy him while he's at the club, because, and the fact as well, he's only been in professional football for 3 or 4 years. I think that is so great that he's got the ability that he has to be able to put in the performance that he is in big games in the Champions League as well. Some of the passes he was spraying across the park at home to Real Madrid was immense. So I think Reo Hatate has been one of the best players in Scotland this season. I think Kyogo can compete with him due to the goals factor, but I would say he is a contender for player of the season.
I think as well. Sorry, Graham. I think an interesting thing Josh said there, but he's kind of kicked on towards the kind of Champions League and things like that. I think he's used the fact he hasn't made the Japan squad as a real inspiration to kick on, because you saw since the World Cup he's just kicked on, and I think that'll be deep down at him. He'll be going, right, that's my inspiration to just, as you say, and every Celtic player, every player that comes into Scotland is looking for a move elsewhere, whether we like it or not. That's what they're using Celtic or Rangers as a vehicle to go to the next level. This is the perfect opportunity. He's able to play Champions League football. He's playing in big games like that where he's got 50,000, 25,000 one side, want him to have the best game of his life, 25,000 baying for his blood. That's a brilliant atmosphere for a young player, especially one that's coming over from. I mean, we speak. You probably know the J League better than me, but one thing it doesn't strike me as intensity. But these Celtic players are coming in, and they have this level of intensity. They're able to go up so high, and you see that there. Like I look at it very similar to yours in terms of like enjoying while he's here, because these Celtic players are going to go for big money, and there's a lot of teams in England in particular who could use a player like Reo Hatate. So enjoy him while he's here.
Alba Scottia McNeely, I think I pronounced that right, says, yes, Celtic, well done, what a game. Well, Alan, the game, I think a lot of folk at that point at 2-0 up thought the game was done, but it certainly wasn't, because Alfred Morelos scores, a handball was given, it's a good free kick from Tavernier, decent finish from Morelos, and from then on in, the game changes. And also what changed is the substitutions, because Celtic make a double change. They take off Jota and Moy and bring on O'Reilly and Abada. And Rangers make a hat-trick of changes, taking off Lundstrom, Kamara and Tillman, bring on Cantwell, Raskin and Jack. And from that moment on, Rangers started to get foothold in the game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously welcomes Scott's view, because obviously my kind of biased opinion is that we started to just give the ball away. And maybe Scott will rightly say that new Rangers midfield put Celtic under more pressure. But I just think we just seem to panic, really. We just seem to go into have a period where we just simply panicked, and we're giving the ball away in really bad areas, not completing simple 5-yard passes, miscontrolling the ball. It just looked like the confidence suddenly evaporated from the team, and I don't understand it. It's very unlike a Postecoglou team, where they're very calm, usually very consistent. They don't get rattled by what the opposition are up to or what the crowd are up to, or they tend to just get on and keep playing their football. But we absolutely did have a bit of a brain fart for a while there. I think we played out the last sort of 10-15 minutes there, but between that hour mark and the sort of maybe the 80th minute, I thought we were all over the place. I don't know what happened there. And in the week when I've sort of studied it more analytically, I'll probably have something a bit more thoughtful for you. But I was just sat there and thinking, what are we doing? Can you not just pass the ball to someone else in a green shirt, please? Like, yeah, been doing quite well for the first 60 minutes. But I don't know, maybe the reinvigorated midfield of Rangers, maybe that, to be fair to them, had an impact as well, I'm sure.
Scott, there's no doubt that it's that old phrase that goals change games. Morelos gets that goal and it gave Celtic a lift. It gave Rangers a lift. But again, I think those changes made a massive difference. Cantwell was getting a bit further forward more than Tillman was. Jack was putting tackles in. And I think those changes really helped Rangers.
Yeah, it was interesting because the changes happened. The goals Morelos scores before the changes are made. And when Morelos scores, I'm looking at the touchline going, please do not change. Please do not have a second thought and make these changes, because they need to happen. And I found it interesting that he continued to play on. I think Celtic did kind of settle down. They did settle down a wee bit, because this Celtic team go gung ho for a long period of the first half. That is the way, as Alan rightly says, they don't change. But when it went 2-1, you did see a wee change in Celtic. They were a wee bit complacent. The big thing with Celtic is that they're so good at the press. The press, they just hunt in packs, try and just not let anybody get in front. That's why they're so good against teams like Livingston and Ross County, for example, because they don't give them a minute's peace. And they did it again today. They do it against Rangers all the time. Rangers can counter press though, and Rangers didn't do it for the first 55 minutes. And when they brought the three midfielders on, you just saw an instant change because they had that balance there. Jack was able to just sit back and Jack loves to get forward, but Jack's able to just sit and keep the ball. Raskin was kind of getting into good areas, opening space. Cantwell was finding wee pockets as well further forwards. And they had that balance. And for 5-10 minutes of that second half, just after they'd scored, Rangers were going at any time Celtic had the ball, and I found Starfelt very interesting, and I'm keen to get Alan's thoughts on this as well. I think Starfelt's a brilliant defender, but with the ball at his feet, if he's put under pressure, he's a panic anytime I see him. Like, he just always seems to be dangerous. I always worry he could give the ball away and cost, because Hart's not great with the ball at his feet either, and if he plays the ball back to Hart, that could be a problem. But Rangers were able to just get that counter press, hunt in packs, and just give Celtic something to think about. But when you're doing that, you need to take advantage of your chances. And Rangers get into some really good areas. There was a point where Cantwell just was attacking down the right-hand side, and Sakala was in one of his brain farts and just went left instead of just following Cantwell's run. And it was infuriating to watch, because I'm like, even if you've got no dog in the fight, you're like, even a football fan would be going, why is Sakala not following that run? You'll see it. I mean, there's a terrific example of that earlier today when you saw Harry Kane's goal for Tottenham. Kane is brilliant. That's football intelligence. You go and watch that goal back, because Kane is just following the run, knows where to be, and any striker is able to do that. And it bugged me. It bugs me watching Sakala at times. But yeah, the counter press was a big thing, and they were just putting Celtic under pressure. And then it got to about 80 minutes, and you're thinking, has the moment passed? If Rangers were going to get back into the game, they had to score then. And Celtic just saw it out really well, because Rangers were giving away silly fouls, and Celtic were just able to control the last 10 minutes, and that was the big difference.
Josh, were you getting worried at any point during that game? And also, I will say, after 70 minutes, Rangers get a free kick about 25 yards out, and you're thinking Tavernier could score here. Were you getting worried at any point?
From, like Alan said, like 60th minute towards the 80th minute, Rangers had a big spell of pressure. The changes made a difference in that. Tavernier free kick was a big opportunity for them. The wall for Celtic did do its job. Of Cameron Carter-Vickers. Joe Hart, I think, could have held that. Deflected off Carter-Vickers, then came up, and Joe Hart came out his goal. Punched. But Celtic weathered the storm. A lot doesn't get said about Celtic's defence. A lot is talked about their attack and how fluid and fluent they are. Celtic's defence is the best in the country as well. They concede very few stupid goals nowadays from what they did at the beginning of Postecoglou's tenure. They've certainly taken the back. Scott, you talked about Carl Starr there. I think he does have his moments, so to speak, but he can be quite composed as well. We've seen that when he was taking the ball. I think it was in the first half. He done a wee Cruyff turn inside his box. I think Celtic fans had a mini heart attack there. But Celtic did weather the storm, and once it got to about the early 80 minutes, I think Celtic begun to take control, and I think the substitution of O was a big one as well, and Iwata coming on as Celtic. I think they changed to a double pivot in midfield for a bit. We might have a 4-2-3-1, and I think that kind of helped calm things down and win that midfield battle. And the likes of we could just go long to him all the time, and he was winning fouls. He did give away a few, granted, however, winning corners. Matt O'Reilly was using his body there, and we could have easily had another goal or two on the counter attack. So I think it was excellent game management by Celtic in the end, but Rangers did have their opportunities between about the 60th and 80th minute where they easily could have had a goal or two.
Alan, I heard it mentioned during commentary that the substitutions of Kyogo for O and Hatate coming off for Iwata was bold by Postecoglou. Were they the right calls for you?
Yeah, I mean, as Scott rightly said, Kyogo is a very different centre forward to Morelos. Morelos, likes to get involved in the game. He likes to come short. He likes to get involved in physical battles. Kyogo very rarely touches the ball other than to put it in the back of the net. He doesn't link play. He's not interested in getting joining up the play, but he does do a tremendous amount of running off the ball. So he generally will come off after 60, 70 minutes because of just the explosiveness that he puts into his counter pressing and his work rate. outside of having the ball, and then the vast number of runs that he makes where he doesn't get the ball, and he's doing it, and they're all at sort of sprint pace. So he generally you'll only get that sort of out of him. Postecoglou, I'm told, he loves this kid. Although he's young and a bit like Hatate, he's not got a huge amount of professional football under his belt. He's come from a very different environment in the K-League. But Postecoglou's got a lot of faith in him, and as you saw in the fact that he's played quite a few minutes in the last few weeks. He started the last game when I was expecting him to put Maeda in the middle. So I don't think Postecoglou would have seen it as a bold move, even if others might. And as Josh said, he brought something completely different. He harassed the Rangers centre backs. He bashed into them, which they were not used to. And he just kind of gave that, as it rightly said, gave Celtic that option to kind of go longer, and it just helped to relieve the pressure a little bit. So I don't think it was a particularly brave move. I don't think Postecoglou would see it that way. As far as Iwata's concerned, he's an interesting one. Obviously, again, he's new to Scotland, he's new to Celtic, and he's not played many minutes. But what he has done in the minutes that he has played, there's two things really that he seems to bring to it. One is, and it was ironic because I said to my daughter as he came on, I said, "Oh, thank God, we've now got someone who will pass the ball to a green shirt." And the first thing he did was he gave the ball away. But anyway, he's generally very safe in possession. And if you want like a closer, if you like, you want to bring someone on who can then sort of change the pace of the game and really start to sort of move the ball about and keep it, he's exactly that sort of player. But the other thing that's perhaps slightly surprising about him is he's a very assertive player in terms of organisationally. He doesn't mind telling players what to do. He's always pointing. He's always talking to people. Now, I don't know what his English is like, and I don't know what he's saying, but he's very vocal with his teammates, and he's very assertive in his play, and that's brilliant. I love that, to see someone who's never played in Scotland having his first big move. He's a young player, not even, must have huge language challenges, to come in and start pointing and telling everyone what to do. I think is like, wow, that's really impressive. So that's why I was really encouraged when he came on. I thought it was exactly the right move, because if we'd brought Turnbull on, for example, he'd have brought next to nothing in terms of seeing the game out defensively. He's just not effective in that way. You bring him on if we were a goal down, maybe, but not when you're a goal up with 10 minutes to go. So I thought it was exactly the right pair of substitutions, to be fair.
This has been a very quick hour. We've got about 8 minutes left, but obviously Celtic do win the game. They maybe could have killed the game off near the end. A couple of chances. Rangers are pushing forward to try and wrap the game up. But do you think that, obviously, overall, do you feel that Celtic probably were deserved winners, or do you feel that certainly, I know the game's last 90 minutes, but do you think maybe after the 60th minute, Rangers did enough to take the game to extra time?
Nah, I don't think so. I think the best team won. I think that's fair to say. I think just when you were talking there about the subs, I found it interesting when you were saying there about Kyogo going off. The exact same time Kyogo goes off, Morelos comes off. Now I know I've slated Morelos' performance. I don't think he had a good game. But when he was bringing Cholak on, the first thought I had was, right, he's going to put two up front and really go for this. He brought Morelos off, and then all of a sudden you started to see the long balls coming to try and get Cholak in the air. And there was a difference. I think that was a big reason that Celtic were able to get back into the game and that game management, because he brought Morelos off, and you could see the change in dynamic, that he was just wanting to get the ball up high. He was trying to get Cholak to kind of knock it on to Cantwell and Kent, and it just wasn't working. And I do think Morelos was going off. I think if you put the two up front, just see how it works. I know obviously he's got this 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 idea in his head, but in that sort of scenario, you put your strikers on and just try and get something. The Scott Wright sub I didn't get at all. I know taking off Sakala I thought was the right call, but Hadji was there, Arfield was there. Now whether they're 100% fit is a question, but if they're fit to be on the bench, then they're fit to play 5 minutes, in my opinion. I don't know, maybe I'm quite old-fashioned. If they're on the bench, they should be able to come on. Arfield's more of a threat in the last 5 minutes than a Scott Wright, for example. So Celtic were able to see the game out. But Josh said at the start, and I'll stick to it, I totally agree on this, and me and Josh will talk about it later on, Celtic scored their goals at the absolute right times. The best times in the game was when Celtic scored, because they were the two time just before half time. I remember saying it. If Rangers can keep it to 0-0, Rangers are a lot better in the second half, and Celtic will tire, as they're prone to do, because you can't keep that going for 90 minutes. And Rangers, if they can keep it to 0-0 at half time, Rangers will go out the traps a bit better, and they did, to be fair. But Celtic had that goal, and it just changed that dynamic completely going into half time. And Rangers just didn't take advantage of that early pressure in the second half. And Celtic score a goal from a terrific bit of football. And I think it's just really, really hard for Rangers to come back into it. I know they scored the goal, but this Rangers team are not good at coming back from difficult situations. The only time I've seen them do it recently was that Aberdeen game, where I would go far as to say Aberdeen completely threw it away themselves. Rangers were able to take advantage of that. That wasn't Rangers that won that game. Aberdeen threw that away. So Celtic controlled the last 10 minutes brilliantly, and they deserved to win. They did deserve to win.
Josh, it's the first trophy this season for Ange Postecoglou. Is this the start of a treble?
I think it may well could be. The league, I think it's very, very, very hard for Rangers to come back now. Celtic being 9 points clear with, I think it's like 12 or 13 games to go. They've obviously got the League Cup now in the bag today, and they're in the quarterfinals of the Scottish Cup. They've got Hearts at Tynecastle. That is going to be a really tough one. I believe Hearts always seem to turn up there against Celtic. And if they get through that, they're frankly, when you consider the position they are in the league, 2 games away from a treble, in my opinion. I think that would have been the target at the start of the season for Celtic to win the treble. And I think now it is very much on for them to do it for the first time since, I believe it was the 1920 season. So Ange Postecoglou to win a treble, he'd write his name in the history books of Celtic Football Club. And I think there is a high probability and a high chance they could do that.
Obviously, we've got about 5 minutes left. Alan, it's cup football. Performances don't really matter. But if you're Ange Postecoglou, again, you must be delighted that you've managed to come through this game.
Yeah, so can I just say, by the way, I was dreading having to come on here if we'd lost. And I want to say, Scott, you've been absolutely brilliant. Genuine respect to you. To come on here, you must be disappointed. Obviously losing big game to Celtic, what have you. And, you've represented yourself and your club really well, and I mean that. I'm not being facetious. I'm genuinely.
I appreciate that.
I was dreading coming on here if we lost.
It's never easy. It's never easy. It's never easy. I remember I was telling this story earlier to a friend. Remember when Julian scored the last game?
Yeah.
Rangers absolutely battered Celtic, and I was thinking it was only a matter of time before Rangers get the goal, and that was. I remember that night. I went on a podcast similar to this. That was a sickener. This isn't so bad, but this isn't so bad as that, because I think the better team did win. But yeah, it's never easy. You just know yourself. It's football. It's emotion. We love the emotion. It's cup finals. We love it.
So Sorry, Graham, I didn't answer your question. So I think on Ange, it's listen, he's somebody which I think the majority of Celtic fans are kind of astonished how he has completely understood the nature of Celtic, their place in Scottish culture and society, the nature of football in Scotland, all the cultural connotations, and his own immigrant backstory, his life in Australia, and so the Celtic story resonates with him personally. It resonates with him in terms of it's traditionally the way Celtic play attacking football is the way he always wants to play football. And so I think he feels, and he talks about this great personal responsibility. He understands what he's carrying on his shoulders. I don't know how long he's going to be at Celtic, to be honest with you, because, here's somebody who basically walked in without any support, any backup, any mates with him at all, and basically put his flag in the ground and said, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. And my understanding is he's got almost complete control of the football operation at Celtic now, and nothing happens without his say so, and that's a big change from especially the days under Peter Lawwell when he was CEO. So I don't know how long he'll stay. I'm sure he'll be very proud of this. I hope we keep him as long as possible, but yeah, I don't know what will happen in the summer.
Can I ask you something, Alan and Josh? Sorry, Graham, I keep interrupting you.
No, you're right.
See when you were saying there about how long Ange will be at Celtic, I find this really interesting. See, for example, Chelsea was to come out, and maybe a bad example, I don't know. Chelsea, Graham Potter doesn't seem to be working out. But say, for example, Chelsea came in for Ange Postecoglou and he left 2 weeks from now. Would he get the Rodgers treatment of being accused like that? Would he leave with the best wishes of the Celtic support leaving that time of the season, or would they turn on him? I find that very interesting because I think he is deserving of to be mentioned in that conversation. But I just find it interesting with the way Rodgers was treated after leaving. What he had done, what the trophies he had won, would Ange receive the same level of hostility if he left?
I would be absolutely. I mean, listen, it's football, and as we all know, love the sport, hate the business, right? And there's an awful lot of venality and poor ethics in football in general, right? That's a whole other conversation. I would be absolutely gobsmacked if he walked away in the way that Rodgers did, i.e., sort of slunk out the back door on a Tuesday night, 3/4 of the way through the season, without telling anybody, sort of thing. I would be astonished if that was the way he left. I just don't think those are his personal values to behave that way. Now, listen, it's football and it's money and all that stuff, so we just don't know. But I would be astonished, and it would, if he did leave in the same way Rodgers does, I'm sure it would tarnish his reputation for sure. But I just honestly, maybe I'm being naive, and that's fine. But I honestly can't see that happening.
Just before we finish, Scott, in terms of Rangers and Michael Beale, disappointment today, obviously, but Rangers did compete very well. Is it now just a case of dusting themselves off and moving on from this?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a cup to be. There's the Scottish Cup. I think the league has gone. I think it's difficult to call that 9 points, especially how consistent Celtic have been. But this season was always about getting building blocks in place for a rebuild. Now, I know the thing was Beale was brought in to kind of get the best out of the squad. You have seen he has been talking a lot about players in the summer. I'll be interested to see how this works out. But there's still a Scottish Cup. Today will be a blow. Today will be an absolute blow because it is his first defeat. It's a big game. It's a cup final. Again, a first trophy. With how many Rangers managers have started their career winning a League Cup? Souness was a perfect example. Alec McLeish again came in. Similar situation to this, where he was real far behind Celtic in the league, but managed to win the 2 cups, and it put in place a building block to go and win a treble the season after. Today is a disappointment, but the Scottish Cup, if Rangers can win the Scottish Cup and try and reduce it from 9 points, I still think it'll be a good season for them. I know because Beale's first thing he'll say is Rangers were 9 points behind when I took over, and it's still 9 points, so he hasn't went back the way. He's kept it consistent. Today was a big blow, but it's all about building from that. And I think it's going to be a real interesting end to the season. If he can reduce it tonight from 9 points and win the Scottish Cup, I think it will put him in a good place for next season.
Well, that is our hour done. That was a very quick hour. And it just remains for me again to thank Alan Morrison from Celtic Numbers. Thank you very much. And again, I do completely agree with Alan. Scott, you've been brilliant. And Josh as well, fantastic for coming on. Thank you very much to all of you. As I say, it did finish today. Rangers 1, Celtic 2. We are back next Friday, as always, from 5 till 7. And we'll be on again on the Sunday from 3 till 5. And I hope that Michael's back, because doing this hosting thing the last 2 days has been an absolute nightmare because my throat's killing me. But thank you very much to everyone that's joined us. Thank you for the comments, and we shall see you again next week. Bye-bye.